I have here a pictorial representation of 1/3 and 1/2. And what I want to talk about is the adding together of these two fractions, which we know means counting up the total number of things, or in this case pieces, that we have. The issue with fractions when you start adding them is that we can't total up what we have if our two fractions have different sized pieces. In one case thirds and in the other case halves. So what we need to do is we need to break each of these fractions down into more pieces so that both fractions share common sized pieces. In other words, we want to make our denominators the same. So how do we do that? Well, we can find a common denominator, and in fact we're going to look for the lowest common denominator by looking at the common multiples of our denominators. So we have our denominator of 2, the multiples of 2, I'm just listing them out here, 2, 4, 6, 8, on and on and on, 10, etc. Our multiples of 3, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, on and on and on. And I can see from my list that the smallest common multiple, which will be our lowest common denominator, is 6. In other words, 6 is the smallest number that 2 and 3 will divide into. In other words, we can break both of these fractions into sixths because 3 and 2 both divide into 6. So let me just do that. 1/3 we know in terms of sixths would be 2/6. We can change our 1/3 by multiplying top and bottom by 2 to get 2/6. And we can change our 1/2 into sixths by multiplying top and bottom by 3. So we have changed our 1/3 and our 1/2 into equivalent fractions, 2/6 and 3/6. And now that we have the same sized pieces in both fractional pictures, we can combine, add together those pieces, and we can see that the result from the picture is 5/6, which we can get simply by adding our numerators, 2 and 3, to get 5, and keeping our denominator 6, which represents the size of the new pieces. Let's suppose we were adding together these three fractions. We have fractions with quarters, thirds, and sixths. These are all different size pieces, and so we have to break our thirds, quarters, and sixths into common size pieces. So we think about the smallest number that 4, 3, and 6 all divide into. So we can just think about that, or we can list our multiples. And in doing that, I can see from my list that my lowest common multiple, which will be our denominator, is going to be 12. So we can break our fractions into pieces of size 12, twelfths in other words. So converting our fractions over to equivalent fractions with twelfths, we would have to multiply top and bottom of this fraction by 3 to get 9, top and bottom of this one by 4 to get 4/12, and top and bottom of this one by 2 to get 2/12. And then we know that our size of pieces will be twelfths, and we simply add together our numerators, which in this case would be 15/12, which if I reduce that to a lowest terms fraction, divide top and bottom by 3, I get 5/4, or 1 1/4 in total. So to add or subtract fractions, we need a common denominator. How does it work when we have mixed fractions? Well, what you need to do is first of all convert your mixed fractions over to improper. So 4 1/4, that would be 4 times 4, 16 plus 1, that would be 17/4. And 3 2/5 would be 3 times 5 plus 2, 17/5. And to subtract pieces as to add them, we need to have equal sized pieces. So between 4 and 5, our common multiple, we can either list the numbers out or just think about the smallest number that 5 and 4 both divide into, and you will find that that is 20. So we're going to make our fractions into 20ths. And so to change our fourths into 20ths, we would need to multiply top and bottom by 5. And that would be 5 times 17. That would be 85 20ths. Our 17/5ths, we need to multiply top and bottom by 4. And that would be 68 20ths. And then to get our final answer, which will be in 20ths, we simply subtract our numerators. And that comes out to 17 over 20. We check to make sure our final answer is a simplified fraction, and it is, so we're finished.